What's up, guys? It's Dave. In the last video, I showed you how to set up a SSH server. In this video, we're going to start doing fun stuff with it. We're going to use it as a SOCKS proxy. So, what's a proxy? A proxy is a server that you do something else through. So, what we're going to do is browse the web through this other server. Now, why in the world would you want to do that? Imagine you're sitting at an airport. And as with every airport, there are 3 or 4 guys who are running maybe their own access points that are open for people to connect to, or just sniffing packets as they fly by to try to find people's passwords, logins, analyze what they're doing online, what sites they're visiting, what pages they're looking at if they're not encrypted, etc. This is really creepy. People are doing this. You basically always see this when you go to some public place. There's always some joker who sets up their own wireless access point that's open and then just attacks people that try to connect to it. So there's some protection, like if you're using HTTPS, there is some protection against people seeing what pages specifically on the site you're looking at or sniffing your passwords and usernames. However, it's still creepy and it's still wrong, and God knows way too many services don't have encrypted logins still. So what you're going to do is, instead of being one of the sheep that gets owned on that network, is you're going to connect to your SSH server and tunnel everything in one encrypted connection to that server, and then do your browsing from your server instead. So instead of seeing a bunch of connections opening on your machines to various sites that you're visiting, anyone sniffing the network will only see one connection opening from your laptop, let's say, to your server. Just some random IP, they have no idea where that is. It's just some server somewhere on the internet. And that's it. All the connections you're actually making to the web or to other services or to other servers on the net are from your proxy server. That server acts as a proxy for you. So someone who's doing something on your behalf. This makes me happy, so I'm going to share it with you. It's really easy to set up. In the last video, we set up an SSH server on our local host, so on our local machine, but I'm actually going to use a separate server for this. So we're here on our BSD server. Our address, okay, just getting our address for the proxy. So if I say I'm going to edit the SSH daemon config file. That's in etc, the configuration directory. Then the name of the app that we're configuring, and then the configuration file. You can see this basically looks like the one on Linux. There's a couple changes, defaults are set somewhere else, and so these are all commented out. You can see this hash mark. So you'd only uncomment these if you were changing them, but this shows you what the defaults are. So it's running on port 22. It doesn't permit root login, important. Allows key-based login, and doesn't allow password authentication. Those are the important settings. I might be forgetting one, but I'm not sure. Those are the really important ones. So this basically is already doing everything we need. However, we're going to change one thing. When you're using something as a proxy server, what a lot of networks do is, for quote-unquote security, they will prevent people from going out on non-web surfing related ports. You see this at really most Wi-Fi at Starbucks or airports or what have you. Only allows traffic on normal HTTP, so that would be port 80, or HTTPS, which would be port 443. So generally you will want to run your SSH daemon listening on one of those ports, because it's guaranteed to work from every place you are. I can't tell you the number of times that I have set up a server with SSH for some purpose and then have been somewhere where I'm like, oh man, I could really use a proxy server right now. Try to tunnel there, and of course everything on port 22 is blocked on the network that I'm on, so from Starbucks or from the airport. So what we're going to do is uncomment this and change it. So let's say we want to run this on port 443 on all of our interfaces, and that's really the only thing we'll change. So this thing is now, once we restart the service, we'll be listening on port 443. Good. So we've written that as root. And we're going to restart the service. Okay. You can see we're running SSH on 443. That would be this here. Good. So our server is accepting connections. Now I just need to add my public key. So that would be in, if you've created a public key, it's in SSH IDRSA pub. If you haven't done this, you need to create keys. I showed that in the last video, or you can just run SSH keygen TRSA, and then, well, you can leave this off, but I like to do 4096 if you're doing real keys. That's what I recommend doing. We're going to copy this into Dave's authorized keys file, or create it if it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Authorized underscore keys. So I've pasted the key in there. I'm going to save it. And now I can use this as a SOCKS proxy. So if we just open a new workspace and say Firefox, we'll go to Edit, Preferences, Advanced, Network, and then under Connection, click on Settings, Proxy. So now we're going to set up the tunnel. We don't want to log in, so no login. Bind to a local port. We're just going to bind to 8080 on our current machine. So this is the port that our SSH tunnel is going to terminate at. So it's from the SSH server at whatever port it's at to this terminating port on our machine. We're going to use the user Dave at our server. And we're going to do that on port 443. Since it's key-based logins, enter your password. And since we're not logging in, you won't see anything after this. So you can go back to your open Firefox. In the Preferences, go to the Advanced tab. In Settings, and under SOCKS host, so manual proxy configuration, SOCKS host, you want localhost, so 127.0.0.1, your machine. Sorry, not 443, we want 8080. So this is on your machine, this is always localhost address, where that SSH tunnel is terminating. So from your machine at this port to your SSH server at port 443. Now we're connecting through that proxy using the SSH server as our proxy. So that's how you use SSH, an SSH server, as a proxy for browsing the web. You can see on our localhost 8080, we've got a socket open that's doing SSH with our remote server. So there you go. That is one way to browse a little bit more safely on untrusted networks. So the prerequisite is, obviously you need an internet connected SSH server somewhere out there that's already running on a port that isn't blocked from your local network. So if it's running 80 or 443, that's probably going to be accessible from any network that you find yourself on, whether it's Starbucks, an airport, hospitals, etc. So there you go. You create a connection to your OpenSSH server, terminate it on your local machine, keep it open, and then you can tunnel other applications through it. Again, here's the command that you're using for that. I hope that makes sense. SSH, this isn't going to be a login. Bind to a local port. That local port would be 8080. Here's the SSH info. Like normally, if you just wanted to get a shell on the remote host, you would just say SSH and then just this bit here. And that's enough. That'll do it. Cool. If that's helpful, give this video a like or subscribe, or both. And I'll see you in the next one. Lots more stuff you can do with SSH, and I'm going to show you a bunch of it.